Hi, today we're with Forrest Johnson. Forrest is running for City Council for LaGrange. Forrest, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born here in LaGrange, actually when it was still West Georgia Medical Center. Grew up here, went to Troop High School, left LaGrange for just a few years to attend the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! Graduated with a degree in international affairs, and then came back to LaGrange to start working in my community. I've worked with the college. I've done some work with tourism. I've worked in mental health. I've done some work in workforce development, and now I'm in banking and finance.
Okay, great. Well, tell us a little bit about what has got you interested in running for political office.
So I feel like LaGrange is at a really important place right now. We're at a real crossroads with where the city is, and we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions about the direction that we want to go from here. I'm excited about LaGrange. I'm excited about our prospects, and I feel that we need strong leadership to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. We need to manage our development. It's no secret that LaGrange is a growing place right now, and I think that it's very important to make sure that we manage that development so that our development is sustainable, that it's fair development, that it's not benefiting one group over another, and I'm just very passionate about that. And I felt like this is the best way to serve my community, was to run for this opportunity.
And speaking about development, are you familiar with the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance for LaGrange?
Yes, yes.
What is your opinion? Do you think that there needs to be any changes to the UDO, and would you be open to changes that would benefit the community?
I think that every document should be up for revision. I think that nothing is really set in stone, especially when it comes to development. I know that LaGrange has a comprehensive master plan that we enacted back in 2021, but that feels like a long time ago. And I would be very hesitant to say that anything should be set in place and not be able to go back and revise that and make adjustments as needed.
Right, and just over the last 5 years is home prices, between interest rates and home prices, so the affordability differences in your payment is up 85% for the same home at the same price, and so
Yes.
that is one thing that there's been a lot of discussion on is changes. So would you support community involvement again to have a meeting where people come forward and talk about things that are needed in the community for housing?
Oh, absolutely. I think that community involvement is key to running the city of LaGrange. I think that as city leaders, we need to hear input from the people that live here. We can't just make these decisions in a vacuum. We've got to have community involvement. A good example would be the rezoning out near the Bryant Lake subdivision. There was a developer who wanted to change how that was set up and approached the city, went through all the proper channels, but because of our democratic processes, the people had the opportunity to approach the city council and say how they felt, really explain how that was going to impact them. And I think that community involvement, when the council saw that kind of pushback's a strong word, but that hesitance, that reluctance to allow something like that to happen, I think that really swung the city council to take a step back and say, you know what, let's look at how this is going to impact the people who actually live in this community. Let's take a step back and not just go along with something because a developer is telling us we should do it.
Right, right. I'm going to switch gears.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the budget. Do you support the city council or the city of LaGrange funding nonprofit organizations? And give me a little bit of detail on your thought, along those lines.
Okay. So LaGrange is very fortunate to have several really wonderful nonprofit organizations that do a lot of good in our community. In a lot of ways, I feel that nonprofit organizations are able to benefit the citizens of LaGrange more than services provided by a government. But I also feel like we need oversight on that. The city can't just hand out grants to everybody with a song in their heart and a smile on their face. So I do feel like there needs to be a review of how those grants are administered, how those grants are given out. But I absolutely believe that we have a lot of great nonprofits that do a lot of wonderful things for our city.
So would you like to see the City of LaGrange budget increased or decreased for the line item of making grants available to nonprofits?
I don't know that we need to increase or decrease that line item. I think we just need to be more careful about how those funds are distributed.
So more oversight and follow up maybe
Yes. Yes.
on those grants. Can you tell us about a specific instance in your life that has really pushed you forward in wanting to run for office?
So, a few years ago, when the city of LaGrange, when tourism was administered by the Chamber of Commerce, I felt like at that point, LaGrange was really starting to grow. It was really starting to develop actual tourism assets that were going to make that an important industry in our community. And I wanted to see if maybe there was a different way to administer that. So I went to the city council. I filed some freedom of information requests and asked the city council to really look at how tourism tax dollars were being administered. Questions were asked, and the idea of having an independent tourism authority came about. And I feel like because I pushed for that, because I helped make that happen, that showed me that the power that someone can have just by going in front and asking questions. And seeing the impact that Visit LaGrange has had on our community, I think it's been great. I think Kathy Tilley does an excellent job with that. And I feel like there are other questions that we can ask about how our city is run. And I would really like to be the one to ask those questions.
So that sounds like that you're very proactive in Visit LaGrange is a great organization. I did not know the history or the background on the organization. So I'm glad that you did come forward and ask that.
It's not a commonly known story, but yeah, I felt like there was a better way to run tourism. I felt like there was a better way to grow that industry here in LaGrange. And I feel like there are other questions. I think you're right. I consider myself a very proactive person. I'm not the kind of person to say, well, we've always done it like that. That's not an excuse to keep doing something the same way. I think that it's always important to continue to look forward, to look at how we can do things differently, to consider options and not just say, well, that's how that's always worked out. So, but yes, I would consider myself a very proactive person in that regard.
Good. There's limited time in office. I mean, so what is the one reform? What is something that you would like to be known for that you've been able to improve in our community?
That's a really good question. I'm not in this to create my own personal legacy. I'm in this to help benefit the city of LaGrange. And so if people look back and they see the things that were happening in our city at that time and just happen to see that, I was on the city council for that, that's one thing. But I'm not in this for my own personal legacy.
Very good. Very good. What do you think is a societal need in LaGrange that you would have the power in this position to help that need?
So in my work as a banker, I help people with their money. I feel that personal finances are something that's very important, if not one of the most important things apart from your health, that really impacts a person's life. So I've seen firsthand the challenges that a lot of our citizens are facing. I think that housing is very important. I think that transportation is very important. One of the things that I would really like to see is expanding public transportation in the city of LaGrange. That's such an important thing for so many of the people in our community. And if there's a solution to be found with that, I would love to work toward that.
Great. With the financial pressures that we have, families have, organizations have, and the community has with inflation and just financial pressures, what is one thing that you would like to see cut in the budget?
I think that when you start talking about budget cuts, that puts a really negative connotation on things. I wouldn't like to see things necessarily talked about as cuts, but more distributing things differently. I think that overall the city does a fairly good job of managing their budget. The fact that we can enjoy among the lowest utility rates in the state of Georgia, and still not have a city property tax is a testament to how the city manages their finances. And I think that's an important role of the city council, is to make sure that responsible stewardship of city resources, of taxpayer dollars, continues to happen.
So Forrest, you're right. Earlier you talked about LaGrange was growing. So what is your plan, or how do you see that the city needs to preserve the character of LaGrange while making sure that we are able to grow to bring that benefit to LaGrange?
I think that's a great question. I think that goes into managing our development. But I feel like one of the strong characteristics of LaGrange is our neighborhood spirit. We have so many unique, almost independent neighborhoods here in LaGrange. And so I think that development needs to be managed in terms of those neighborhoods by strengthening. That's where we really are able to strengthen our communities. But beyond that, when we talk about development, we talk about growth. One of the things that I studied at Georgia was economic development and the impacts that can have. And I think that the way we need to look at it in LaGrange is development that is going to benefit everybody. A lot of times when we talk about development, we describe it as a zero-sum game. So every time someone gets something, it's going to take it away from someone else. So think about it like a pizza. If you get a slice of pizza, that's a slice that someone else doesn't get. So in terms of development, we don't need to think about who's going to get which slice. We need to think about how to grow the pie so that everyone gets more.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you there. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to give you the last couple of minutes to tell why the community should consider voting for you for City Council.
So I would say that a vote for me is a vote for one city. It's true that I'm up for election in District 1, but I don't see the districts in LaGrange. I see that the city council is there to serve the entire city. So if you want someone to represent our entire city, then you should absolutely consider me. That's why I've made my campaign slogan, one city, one direction. And that's how we're going to make LaGrange better, is to grow the city and get us all moving in one direction. And that direction needs to be forward. If you want to learn more about my campaign, why I'm running, my motivations, I do have a website, voteforforrest.org. And Forrest has 2 R's.